Drop-down lists are a fundamental feature to ensure clean data input in Excel. When a solution uses data validation in multiple columns, very often there is a dependency between the values we want to enter in those columns. Dependency means that the list of valid values to enter in a column will depend on the values that we entered in previous columns. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine we have this input table. For the sake of this example, we are keeping it with 2 columns only, and we have a category column and a subcategory column. For the categories, we will have continents. So we have a list of continents here. And for the subcategory, I want to enter a country that belongs to the previously selected continent. So for North America, I only want to see valid options here in the second column. If I choose another continent, then I want to see only valid options for that continent, in this case, Europe. You also saw that red appearing here. That's conditional formatting that I set up to notify me in case I go back to the previous column and change the continent. So for example, now, if I changed Europe to Africa, the option previously selected in the second column, Portugal, is no longer valid for the continent Africa. So this conditional formatting rule alerts me to tell me, hey, you need to change this because this is not valid anymore. To make this work, we need 2 fundamental pieces and then a couple more of items to support those pieces. So we need this table here that I called all combinations table. If you go to table design, the name of the table is TBL_ all combinations. This is a table where I list all the possible combinations I want to have between continents and countries, category and subcategory. So I list the category as many times as needed to pair with each one of the subcategories belonging to that category. And in here I have a helper structure composed of different formulas that I will show you in a minute how to build. The great thing about this is that all this structure is dynamic. So if now I come here and I add a new country to South America, let's say Chile, because I have my list as an Excel table, this is a very important factor, not arranged. This is an Excel table. Everything will expand, and the formulas that we have here are referring to the columns in the table. We'll be able to absorb any new values we add to the table. So we can see here South America now has Chile here. So we have all the options going across the columns to the right, and they are sorted alphabetically. And of course, if we come here, we now have under South America the option Chile. We can also add new categories. So for example, if we add a new continent and a corresponding country, we now have that new category and subcategory showing here in the helper functions, in this helper structure, and we have the new category available and subcategory available too in our drop-down lists. One final example, if I add a new country to this new continent, here we have it available in our drop-down lists. So you only need to set these once, and once this structure is built here, you can manage, add, delete, modify all the categories you need through this table. Okay, so how do you like this? Do you want to learn how to do it? So let's go. Welcome to another Excel Snap Reports class. My name is Celia Alves. I am a Microsoft MVP specializing in Excel, and I love to automate repetitive work in Excel and make solutions easy to use like the one we are going to learn today. If you would like to get the files to follow along with the video, they will be available in a link in the video description. One last thing before we start. Please remember to leave your feedback to help us grow this channel. If you find the content useful, remember to subscribe and share it with your network. You never know when a piece of information can make someone's day. And I hope this one makes your day today. Let's start. So we are starting with this file that already contains our list of different continents and countries. I'm going to remove these last two rows so that we can test later. So what we need is this table. Then we have an input sheet. I recommend that we also use tables for our inputs. In this case, I only have the two columns. We could have more. Usually in a real case scenario, you will have other columns belonging to your table, but I'm only working with the two that we need for this tutorial, the one where we will enter the category and then the one where we will select the subcategory. Category and subcategories in your real case scenario could be, for example, categories and subcategories of products. They could be products and the suppliers that provide you with those products. They could be different cities and the different stores that you have allocated to each one of the cities. They could be different departments and the managers in those departments, and so on and so on. So you see, you can apply this construction in Excel to many different scenarios. And then here, this will be the area where we will build a couple of formulas to support our drop-down lists. In a real case scenario, you see here I have sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. It means that usually we would build these three different things in three separate sheets in Excel in our workbook. But for the sake of the demonstration, to make it easier for us, I will have everything here in one sheet only. One important note before we continue is that this solution can only be built in Excel for Microsoft 365 subscriptions or Excel 2021. Or you can also do it in Excel for the web, and you can access that with a free Microsoft account. The great thing about this is that this solution, once built, will work on your mobile devices. I would not recommend trying to build it there. I don't think it's possible even. But once it's built, you can enter your data, edit, modify your choices in your drop-downs on the go, on your phone, or on another mobile device. So this is a great solution for a great number of business cases. Okay, so let's do this. The first thing we need to do is to build the data validation for the first column. We need to get a list of all the items that we allow to be entered here. Those items are in this column, except that they are repeated. So we can use the unique function to give us the list of unique items, right? So we can go to here, let's say cell 04, and I go unique, and then I point to the column of that table. We get table structured references here, name of the table, and then the name of the column in between square brackets. And that's why using tables is so important here, because now as the table grows or shrinks, the unique function always knows what it needs to grab to then provide the list of unique items. If we want to have this sorted, we can also add the sort function. Coming here at the beginning of the function, just type in sort, close parentheses at the end, and we have our list of categories sorted. This is a spilled array. The function only exists in that cell. I like to paint the cells that I have with formulas with gray so that I remember that there's a formula there. Here there's not really a formula, but the cell is occupied with the values that were generated by the formula above. Okay, so now we have all we need to build the first data validation rule. Selecting this column category in our input sheet, come to data and then data validation. Here under list, we will refer to that cell, but we want in fact to refer to all the values generated from that cell. So what we will do is we point to that cell and we will add an hash sign at the end, meaning give me all the results. It does not matter how many they are that are generated from the formula that we have in 04. And okay, so let's test. We now have all the continents here and our drop down is working. Great. So now let's go to the second portion. The items I want to choose in the second column depend on the value that I choose on the first column. So I need to find a way to build my sublists for each one of these items. The items for the first column are in this spilled array here. So I will build on this to get the sublists. Let's start with the first item, Africa. What are the options that we have available for Africa? Those are all the options that we have in the second column of this table that correspond to rows, that exist in rows that contain Africa in the first column of that table. So for that we can use the filter function and say filter the second column of this table. Let's move this out of the way, comma, and include everything that in the first table is equal to this item in O4, comma, and then we have an if empty optional parameter. Let's say category not found, although we would not need that, but let's leave it like that. Okay. So these are all the options for Africa. Because I will need to build another sublist in the next row for Asia, what I need is to make sure this list goes across the columns in the same row instead of down the column. So for that, what we can do is to use transpose. Or as Winston Snyder suggested in one of my recent presentations, we could also use the function toRow. Both work. So if we do that, all the results are transposed from vertical to horizontal, and we have all the options there. And this is the sublist of values for category Africa. Ideally, we would like to be able to put an hash sign here when we are referring to O4. Since O4 is spilling an array, ideally I would like to be able to put an hash sign here and have the transpose function return multiple sublists, one per item in the array that spills out from O4. Let's try that. But unfortunately that does not work because we would want Excel to produce an array of arrays, and currently it's not able to do that. So what we need to do is to remove this hash sign here and copy the formula down as many times as we think we will need to have available. So currently I have 5 categories, but if I am expecting to have more, I need to copy my formula down for more rows. Here we get category not found because it's trying to find a category it's an empty value. To avoid this, we can add if the value here is empty, so double quotes, comma, give me empty, double quotes again, comma, otherwise do what we had programmed before, close parentheses. And I have a formula here. As I mentioned, I like to color these cells in gray, and now I can copy my formula down as many times as needed. Okay, so now I have these different sublists, one per each category. Now, how do I integrate this in my dropdowns? I'm going to explain you the way that I actually used to build this solution for myself, and I like to use named ranges a lot because it helps me to give names to certain ranges, to certain calculation results, and organize my reasoning throughout the process. So I thought, okay, in this second column for the subcategory, I need to give a name to the category that is chosen. That category is in column G in the same row where I am working in column H. So let's select the subcategory column in the table. We need to be mindful of which cell is active. It is the first cell, okay? And now we come to formulas, name manager. We create a new name. I will name this category in row. So what is the category in the row where I am. And this refers to the value on the cell on the left of the active cell. So the active cell now is H4, it refers to G4. But because I want this rule to roll down the column, I want to leave the row reference free, okay? So press F2 to be able to edit here, go to the left, delete the $sign. Okay, press OK. And then press close. This is very nice because if I click in H4 and I go to Name Manager and I check the value for category in row, I see North America, which is correct. Okay, but if I go to H5 and go to the Name Manager and check the category in row name, I see that its value now, it's Europe, because now I'm pointing to G5, okay? So when I say the name, even if I am outside of the table, if I say the name, if I type in category in row, and we already see that it's pointing into that cell, I get the category I have in column G in that same row. So now I want to create a name that finds the category in row in this spilled array here, and then knows where to find the corresponding sublist of all the subcategories available for that category. Okay, I'm going to build it. That will be integrated in a name as well. I'm going to call that name subcategories for category. I'm even going to put it here. Okay, so first thing is to know what the category in row is. Okay, so equal category in row, you start typing and it shows there, click tab, enter. In this row, it tells me that the category in row is North America. Good. Now I want to say, okay, Excel, go and find this category in the list of categories that we have here. We will do that with index and match. So first I'll do the match. Match the category in row where? In the spilled array that we generated from 04. So we say 04, lock that reference and hash sign to refer to all the results spilled from that cell, and comma, that's the lookup array, and now we want an exact match. Let's press 0, close parentheses, enter. So it's telling me that North America is in position 4 and that Europe is in position 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, North America, 3 is Europe. That's correct. So index, let's do index. The array spilled from 04, so same thing, 04. Let's go back here, press F4 and add a hash sign at the end. So index that spilled array, matching with the position that corresponds to the category in row. Go to the end, close parentheses, enter. So this is our formula there. And if we drag the formula down, we see that it's returning the right result. But the great thing about index is it's one of those functions that, besides returning the value in the cell that it calculates, it also outputs the address of that cell. So it's not only saying North America, but it's also saying 07. That's the cell where the North America value is in this spilled array. So now I can take advantage of that information and say, now that you are there, step aside one column to the right and then consider all the entire spilled array of values that are generated from the cell that is one column to the right of North America. So let's come back here. Let's edit this formula, and what we are going to say is offset from this cell reference produced by index, and then come to the end and say comma, number of rows I want to step away from that cell, 0 rows, and number of columns, 1 column to the right. So I put a 1 and then close parentheses, enter. So now you see from North America it's giving me USA, which is the value 1 column to the right. But I don't want just USA, I want the entire spilled array generated from the cell where USA is. So what we need to do is to come here at the end and say, okay, now that you are in that cell, you are in the right place, but I'll give you a hash sign to tell you that I want the entire spilled array. Enter, and there we go. So now let's enlarge here. You see, now we have the 3 values that are in the sublist that correspond to the category North America, which is the category selected in this row. If we do the same, if we drag the formula down, in this case I'll get a spill error because Europe has more values than I have room here to display. So we could either move that, add a new column here, we can do that. If we add a new column here, now we get all the results as we need. There we go. And if we choose something else here, another continent, we get the list of subcategories for that continent. So this is exactly what we need. This is the formula we need to put in the new name that we are going to create. Very important to have, in this case now it's switched to P4. I'm going to remove the column here, just so that because we've been referring to 04, 04, 04, so it doesn't get confusing. So 04 is where we started building all the helper structure. So now this is the formula we need. Very important to have 04 locked, both column and row, with the hash signs. Category in row is the first name we created. I'm going to copy all these, Control C, escape, and now I'm going to formulas, define name, and for the name of the name that we want to give to this named range, I will call it subcategories for category, that's as we have there at the top. And then here we paste the formula that we just copied and say OK. And we will not need this. We can bring these things together. And now let's build our data validation. So select the column for subcategory and let's come to data validation list. And in here we can press F3 and choose subcategories for category. Is it subcategories or subcategories? Category. Anyways, one of those. OK. And OK. So now let's test. There's the options we have for the continent North America. There's the options we have for the Asia continent, and so on. There we go. If we have Europe, there's the options we have for Europe. If we go and add a new country here, South America, let's use the same example as before, Chile, we will have South America and Chile available. Oh, I realize now that these are not sorted alphabetically, so I forgot to add here in this formula we should add the sort function after filtering. So let's do that because it will be nicer to have this sorted. So in between transpose and filter, I guess we could do the sorting after transpose as well. We can do sort, add an extra parenthesis, enter. There we go. So now countries are sorted alphabetically. Let's copy the formula down. There we go, much better now. And so yeah, it's working. If we decide to add a new continent here with a new country, it will immediately become available in our drop-down lists, and that's what's amazing about this. So the only thing now left to do is the conditional formatting that we want to have here in the second column. We want that every time we go back and change the first value in the category column, we want to have an alert in case that category does not match with the subcategory. In this case, the continent does not match the country. So what we need to do is to say, okay, Excel, you need to check if the category is not empty, and then if it's not, see if the value that we have here can be found in the sublist corresponding to that category. If it's an error, then I want you to alert me with a different color in this cell. So we select the column and we go to Home, Conditional Formatting, New Rule, Use Formula. And in here, I'm going to paste the formula that I already have ready that translates that criteria that I was telling you about. So it's saying if the category is not empty, and when we get an error when we try to match what's in H4, we'll come back to this, with the values in the subcategories for category, then if this condition returns true, we want to get let's say a reddish color here. One very important thing is to be mindful about the active cell that we have currently when we are defining the rule, which is H4, and that needs to be the cell that we have here, and the 4 cannot have a dollar sign, okay? So that this rule repeats the same logic down the column H for other row numbers. Click OK, and let's test. So let's say here in China, if I go and change Asia to Europe, now China is no longer a valid option to pair with Europe. So we need to change with something, with another country from Europe. And that's it. It's done. I hope you like it, and I'm sure it will be very useful for a lot of people. One of the things that you can also do if you do not like to create all these names is to go back to your formulas in the names and go to the first name, the name, category in row, copy the formula that is in the name manager, then go to the second name, subcategories for category, and where it says category in row, replace that with the first formula. Then you copy the entire resulting formula that you have there in the second name, and you go to the data validation, and you can replace the name of the list there with this big formula. Same thing for the conditional formatting. We have in the conditional formatting rule for the formula, we are referring the two previous names, so you would have to replace them by the corresponding formulas that we initially created for each one of those. This suggestion was made by Grania Duggan in one of the live sessions we have at the Excel Snap Reports training program. By the way, if you want to know more about that, there is a link in the video description. You can join the training program if you'd like. This is where we learn how to automate our Excel reports and make them update in a snap fingers time. So again, I hope you like it. Thank you so much for being with me up to here. If you endured for the entire tutorial, you are a real champion. I would love to hear from you and know that you are a champion. Type in the word magic in the comments so that I know who you are. And if you like it, remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Remember to share these with your colleagues. I'm sure they will appreciate you. And so that's all for now. Bye now. See you in the next video.